Right now, there is a version of you that no one else has ever met. Not your closest friend, not your partner, not the person who raised you. This version doesn't post, doesn't perform, doesn't explain itself. It just exists, quietly, behind everything you show the world. And here's the strange part. You've spent your entire life managing the gap between that private self and the person everyone else sees, without ever really noticing you were doing it. Think about the last time you had a thought so strange, so specific, or so unflattering that you'd never say it out loud. Maybe it was a flash of jealousy towards someone you love. Maybe it was a memory that still makes you cringe at 1 a.m. Maybe it was a fear you've never told a single person. That thought didn't come from nowhere. It came from the same place all your other thoughts come from. So why does it feel like it belongs to a completely different person than the one who orders coffee and makes small talk at work? Psychologists have a name for this. It's called the private self, and it's not some fringe idea. It's one of the most consistently documented findings in social psychology. As far back as the 1950s, sociologist Erving Goffman described human interaction as a kind of performance, where every person maintains what he called a front stage self, the version shown to others, and a backstage self, the version that exists when no one is watching. You already know this distinction intuitively. You act differently in a job interview than you do lying on your bedroom floor at midnight. Neither version is fake. They're both you. But only one of them ever gets an audience. Here's what's fascinating. This isn't a flaw in your personality. It's a feature of how every functioning human mind operates. Researchers studying self-presentation have found that people manage multiple versions of themselves simultaneously. Not because they're dishonest, but because different environments require different parts of you to lead. The you at your grandmother's dinner table and the you screaming along to music alone in your car are both real. They're just responding to different audiences, and one of those audiences is nobody at all. So what happens to the parts of you that never get an audience? This is where it gets interesting. Psychologist Carl Rogers, one of the founding figures of humanistic psychology, spent decades studying the gap between what he called the ideal self and the real self. But underneath both of those, he described something quieter still, a private inner experience that most people never fully share with anyone, not out of shame necessarily, but because there's simply no social space built for it. No one asks, what's the version of you that only exists when you're alone? So it stays exactly where it's always been, unspoken, unshown, fully intact. Here's a thought experiment. Picture every person you talked to today. Now imagine each of them only knows a slice of you, a specific angle shaped by what that relationship needs. Your coworker knows competent you. Your best friend knows unfiltered you. Your parents might still, on some level, know childhood you. None of them have the full picture because you've never given the full picture to any single person. Not because you're hiding something sinister, because human relationships have always worked this way. Intimacy isn't about total transparency. It's about how much of the private self you choose to let someone see. This raises an uncomfortable question. If no one has ever seen all of you, does that mean you're lying to everyone? Actually, the opposite seems to be true. Research on authenticity suggests that having a rich, private inner world that you don't fully disclose isn't dishonesty. It's psychologically healthy. Studies on self-disclosure have consistently found that oversharing everything, all the time to everyone, isn't associated with better mental health. Selective contextual sharing is. Your brain isn't malfunctioning by keeping a private self intact. It's doing exactly what healthy minds do. It's protecting a space that belongs only to you. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. That private self doesn't just sit there passively. It's active. It's the version of you having a full internal monologue during a boring meeting while your face stays neutral. It's the version of you that has already run through 6 different responses to a text message before choosing the calmest one. It's the version of you that remembers every version of every conversation you wish had gone differently. This inner narrator runs constantly, and almost none of it ever makes it to the surface. Think about how much of your actual mental life is like this. A 2010 study on mind wandering, conducted by psychologists Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert, using real-time sampling of people's thoughts throughout the day, found that people's minds wander from the present moment nearly half of their waking hours. Half. That means for close to half of your day, you're not actually where your body is. You're somewhere else entirely, replaying, imagining, worrying, dreaming, in a private mental space no one else has access to. Your co-workers see you sitting at your desk. They have no idea you just mentally revisited a conversation from 4 years ago. This is the secret version of you. Not a hidden identity, not a mask. Just an entire ongoing inner life that runs in parallel to the one everyone else observes. So why does this matter? Why should you care that there's a private self running quietly underneath your public one? Because most people spend enormous energy trying to close that gap, trying to make their outer self perfectly match their inner one, and feeling like a fraud when it doesn't. But that gap isn't evidence you're broken or fake. It's evidence you're human. Every person you've ever admired, every person who seems effortlessly put together, has an identical gap running underneath their own composed exterior. The confident co-worker has a private self running anxious calculations you'll never see. The calm friend has a private self that sometimes spirals at 2 a.m. just like yours does. You're not uniquely divided. You're just noticing something that's true of everyone and mistaking it for something wrong with only you. Consider how early this split actually begins. Developmental psychologists have long observed that children start distinguishing between their private thoughts and their public behavior remarkably young, often before age 5. A toddler learns astonishingly fast that crying in front of a parent gets a different response than crying alone. That's not manipulation. That's the earliest version of the private self forming, the first moment a child realizes that what happens inside them and what they show outside them are two separate things that can be managed independently. By the time you're an adult, you've had literally decades of practice refining that separation. So much practice that you no longer notice you're doing it at all. This is partly why certain moments catch you off guard. You've probably had the experience of saying something out loud and immediately thinking, where did that come from? That jolt of surprise is your private self briefly leaking into your public one without permission. It's unsettling precisely because you're so used to the gatekeeping being automatic. The private self isn't supposed to slip through unfiltered. When it does, even briefly, it feels like exposure, even if what slipped through was harmless. There's also a physical dimension to this that rarely gets discussed. Your face, more than almost any other part of you, is built to manage the gap between inner and outer states. Facial expression researchers have long studied what's sometimes called display rules, the largely unconscious social agreements that dictate which emotions are acceptable to show in which contexts and which need to be suppressed, softened, or replaced with something more socially appropriate. You learn these rules so early and so thoroughly that by adulthood, adjusting your face to hide your private reaction is no longer effortful. It's automatic, which means most of the time, you don't even consciously experience yourself as hiding anything. The management happens below the level of awareness. This raises a question worth sitting with. If the gatekeeping between your private and public self is mostly unconscious, how much of your own inner life have you actually stopped noticing? It's entirely possible to become so practiced at managing your outer presentation that you lose some contact with what's happening underneath it. Psychologists sometimes describe this as a kind of drift, where people become so identified with their public performance that the private self starts to feel unfamiliar even to them. This isn't universal and it isn't inevitable, but it's common enough that therapists frequently encounter clients who struggle to answer a deceptively simple question: what do you actually feel underneath everything you're presenting right now? Some people find that question surprisingly hard to answer, not because the private self has disappeared, but because it's gone quiet from lack of attention. This is worth reframing because it changes what the private self actually is. It's not a fixed hidden identity waiting to be discovered once and for all. It's more like a muscle. The more you check in with it, notice it, and give it room to exist without immediately translating it into something presentable, the more accessible it stays. The less you check in, the further it recedes, not because it vanishes, but because attention is what keeps anything vivid in your awareness. There's a reason this matters beyond curiosity. People who report a stronger sense of connection to their own private inner experience, according to research on self-concept clarity, tend to report higher well-being and lower anxiety than people who feel disconnected from it. This isn't about oversharing that private self with others. It's about not losing touch with it yourself. The goal was never total transparency to the world. It was never fully collapsing the gap between your public and private selves, because that gap is normal, healthy, and universal. The goal is simply staying in contact with your own inner world, even while managing what parts of it get shown to whom. There's actually something quietly reassuring in this. The version of you that only you know, the one that has the strange thoughts, the unfiltered reactions, the private replays and rehearsals, isn't a problem to fix. It's the part of you that's always been fully yours. No performance required, no audience to manage, just you, exactly as you are when no one else is watching. And maybe that's worth sitting with for a second. Somewhere behind every conversation you have today, that quieter self will still be running, noticing things, replaying things, forming opinions it may never say out loud. It's not hiding from the world. It's simply the one part of you that was never built for an audience in the first place. It was built for you.